All right. Well, let's get going.
Yeah. We're here with Stranded.
Yes. Another episode. I don't know how many we're on, but it's fun. We really are enjoying. I know I'm loving sitting across from you and just having relevant, interesting conversation around topics that I think a lot of parents think about. And
Totally. Well, I think it's funny that we have to schedule this so we can actually hang out and visit and talk. Isn't that just the way it is?
I know. It's not really work. It's just fun and a conversation.
But it's happening, and I love that. So it's really good.
And it's good because it's time that we are making to be in community with each other, which is so important right now because we are so, isolated in so many ways. And so I love that you and I just have this on the schedule and we're like, we're going to talk. We're going to sit face to face without masks. And
what else can you talk about parenting? And it's so fun. Normally it's just like, what do I do? I mean, I'm dying.
Yes. And it's not always fun to live the moments, but it's great to be able to sit across from someone and laugh at ourselves and, maybe cry sometimes. Although we're going to steal away.
The importance of community, which is why I love this so much.
Absolutely. Me too.
So,
well, let's dive into today.
Let's do it.
Yeah. Today we are talking about, it's interesting. We're talking about self-doubt is what we've kind of coined it.
Totally.
But it's just that idea of, as parents, wondering, am I doing this right? Am I parenting right? Right? Like, just that lack of confidence, I think we feel sometimes in parenting when we have to discipline or we come up against issues with our children, whether it be behavior or success, academic, or whatever it could be, sibling rivalry. There's so many conflicts that arise.
Because there are so many different parenting styles out there, and our parents raised us a certain way. We took some of that, that we were like, well, yes, we're going to do this with our kids, and some we tossed out the window.
For sure.
But then kids are different, so it's not like a one size fits all.
It's not.
And so then you just feel like you're in the trenches.
Yes. Like you said, with each kid, it's different too. So
I mean, it would have been super cool to have a manual for each kid.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, was that so hard?
It's not really. It shouldn't have been. I mean, he gave Moses stone tablets.
Totally.
On a mountain.
Like engraved on a tablet. We're just asking for a printout.
Or pamphlet.
Yeah.
Yeah, just something. Like, give us some bullet points on parenting and if we're doing it right.
Yes. Or, anything good's going to happen. Because isn't that most of our self-doubt is our kids going to be just big flops? Yeah. Are they going to be failures?
Absolutely. I remember, with my second child, love her so much. But I remember even before she was born, starting to feel that fear and that pressure building around, oh my gosh, I'm going to have another child, another human that I'm bringing into the world that I can mess up. Like, I remember thinking that, like, oh gosh, the pressure of just, I don't want to mess her up. And I don't want to mess my first one up, and just putting the weight of the world on myself about like every decision I make matters in their life. And just, that was overwhelming.
That's funny because I think when we talk about just this insecurity, I don't even think it has anything to do with our kids. I think it's the insecurity that we already have in ourselves.
Right.
Because you just touched on that.
Yeah.
You're already thinking, oh, am I going to be able to do this?
Yeah.
And so we're already thinking, well, we've fallen short. We're not good at that. And we highlight all the things that we feel like we're not doing well.
Absolutely.
And then we add in raising a human to it.
Yes. So, who doesn't always do what you want them to do.
Right.
Like, what is that?
I know.
They're a baby.
There's conflict.
Even before they can speak.
They're saying no at what?
Yeah. Birth, basically. At birth. They come out crying.
Yes.
Like, it starts really rough.
Really rough.
And then it can get harder,
It can.
But, yeah.
Oh, I just remember when my kids were super young, we would have, a really hard time.
Yeah.
But then I would get into this really great routine.
Yeah.
And the kids were rocking, I was rocking, and then 2 months later, start over.
Yes.
Don't you remember that?
We did. And and my husband and I talked about that. And I would talk about it with some friends too, as things seem to come in waves or like seasons, like the terrible twos. Well, it wasn't a whole year, of twos, but it was definitely like, I think for us it was 6 months. It was like 6 months of like, oh my gosh, what are we doing? And they're crazy and they've changed and we don't know what we're doing.
Yes.
And then it was like, oh, finally, okay, we're in a groove. Yes, we did it. We are mastering this thing.
Right.
And then the next 6
and
months
then they
would
start
come, and it's
teething.
like, oh my gosh.
Or they're crawling.
Yes.
Or they're toddling.
Or throwing things.
Yeah.
Or, a myriad
biting kids in their class.
Yes.
I know.
Absolutely.
It's just nuts. But
yeah.
somehow we make it through.
We do make it through.
But there are some really good tools out there.
There are. So yeah, is there something that you remember, early on when maybe you were a younger parent that you felt like, you're still so young.
Oh, totally.
Totally.
I mean,
but when you were a new parent, is there something that, what was it that you kind of clung to or learned or heard?
It's really funny because when I was pregnant with my first, I had all the time in the world, right? Yeah.
Oh,
I mean, everyone is pampering you.
Yep.
I was swole, girl. I was like a beach swell. My ankles.
Did you have cankles?
Totally.
I had cankles.
Oh, I was such an ugly pregnant chick. It was awful. But, I'm laying there with nothing else to do but read.
Yeah.
So I'm reading all of these parenting books and, of course, the what to expect when you're expecting. Yep. And then the parenting books. But, just thinking about it, I went back to one of my favorite books, Shepherding a Child's Heart.
I actually read that same one.
Did you?
Yes, we did that same book.
Yeah. Oh, my God. It was so good.
It was.
But here's the funny thing.
Yeah.
I went back recently just to look it over. I had read that book. I'd highlighted and underlined.
Oh, yeah, dog-eared.
But before you have kids,
Yeah.
you can only take in so much.
So true.
Because you just don't even, there's no context, I guess.
You haven't been through all the things yet with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so looking back at it now,
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my, that is so good. Oh, why didn't I do that?
Oh my
But
gosh.
I'd read the book.
Yeah.
Isn't that funny?
It is funny, and it's interesting that you went back because I
Yes.
have the book in the attic somewhere. I read it and it's like, okay, moving on. But I read it again like you did when I think we had our first kid and she was probably 6 months or so.
Okay.
So that was when I kind of picked it up before we were really dealing with any, child conflicts. It was just more about the scheduling and things like that when they were young. But but I never,
I know.
I remember, like you say, reading it and taking it in and taking in some things that really kind of stuck.
Yes.
And then kind of like, oh, I'll file that away. Thankfully, specifically one thing I remember, and I think it's from that book, but honestly, with my mom brain, it could have been from another book.
Well, yeah, there were so many at that time too.
So many things.
Yeah.
But I remember okay, now see, look.
Mom brain.
And it happens. It's so real.
I bet it was such a good thought too.
It was on boundaries. I think setting boundaries with your kids.
Yes.
Which, just my personality type 2. Not type 2. I'm type 9
Uh-huh.
actually. My personality type also
Yes.
lends itself to that being difficult for me, like setting boundaries. And so, but I remember him talking about boundaries are so important for kids because it builds security. And so, anyway, he had a great illustration in the book. Again, I think it was Tedd Tripp's book, but I'll try to research that and. But talking about like a security guard going around at night and checking doors, right? And he checks doors. That's his job, and he's checking them, hoping that they're not unlocked, right, or they're not open.
Right.
And so if he finds one, like when they're locked, he's feeling like, okay, this is good. But if he finds one that is open, then he starts to get uncertain and like kind of on guard and like, oh gosh, what's on the other side of this door?
The
Has
hairs
someone
stand up on the back of his neck, thinking, what is it?
Definitely. And like now I have to like go seek, like figure out what's going on, right? And go start. And so they, talked about parenting is so much the same way. Like kids want and need those boundaries, right? Like those locked doors when they're young. And then because if they don't have a boundary, if they have a boundary that's kind of give or take or wishy-washy, like then it lowers their security as a child. And I just remember like filing that away, like, okay, well, she's 6 months, but coming back to that so often later when we were dealing with discipline issues and things like that, like, anyway.
Oh, yeah. I mean, boundaries is such a huge topic anyway. I mean, there are books. What is it, Henry Cloud? I can't remember. Boundaries just in marriage and boundary. I mean, that's such a big one. Yes. And totally the kids feeling just that promise, that assuredness of, okay, this is what's happening because they're not big enough to take on all of the things, all the feelings. But no, I wrote down a couple of quotes.
I want to hear them.
Yes.
What were your favorites?
Okay. So here's one of my favorites. It's kind of the main idea of the book.
Okay.
It says, focus on the heart rather than the external behavior.
Yeah.
And that's so true because if you think about it, if we are just focusing on the child's behavior and we're correcting that behavior, that doesn't really do anything.
Right.
Because there's a heart issue.
Yes.
And if you don't address the heart issue, it's just going to manifest in another behavior.
Exactly. That's so true. Yes.
And I love that so much.
It is. Like with lying, right? Let's just take one example.
Yeah.
You know, I remember one of my children, I won't call out which one.
Oh, come on, call it out.
But
yeah, that's a hard one.
He or she did have an issue when they were probably definitely in preschool, so maybe around 4 years old, where they were in a preschool class and took something home. And then later I found it in their bag, and I asked, I was like, what is this? You know, and just you could tell like I know what I did wrong, you know, and like the hiding. And anyway, finally, you know, they let me know that they had taken it. And anyway, but I think she did try to, lying. I think she did try to cover it up first, like, you know, someone gave it to me. And then she did come, so now we've narrowed it down to two.
Now we know it's not one of them.
Sweet Braden. Anyway, but just that natural response of like, oh, it wasn't me, you know, I didn't do it. But then when she did come clean, you know, it was a good teachable moment. But yeah.
Yeah, we had, you know what, we totally had a lying issue in our house too. And you know, that's a good example because in that instance, you know, you could just harp on them about
don't lie.
Yes. Don't you lie. Here's soap in your mouth.
Yes.
All of that stuff.
And shut down the behavior.
Right.
Right. Thank you for getting me back on track. And that was more you know, we realized like, this is something deeper going on.
Yes.
Why did she feel like she had to lie about it?
Exactly.
Why did she take it? But why did she feel like she had to lie about it? Right. And what we found was she was afraid. She was afraid she was going to get in trouble. There was a lot of fear behind that.
Perfect.
So it was a good opportunity for us to have a conversation with her about, you know, the importance of telling the truth, even if you're afraid, like, you know, it's important to be honest, to build trust.
Yes.
And, you know, and she didn't get that, of course, at 4 years old.
Oh, no.
But it was language that we started then with her, and it was an ongoing conversation that we had over the years, right, of just building on that. And, you know, and we later in through elementary school, I think, you know, this issue might have come around a couple more times. Yes. So we had lots of opportunity to practice it.
Right.
And we were able to just then lean in and say, hey, if you bring something to us before we find out about it, right? Like if you take ownership or initiate and come and tell us if you've done something wrong, we will do everything in our power to listen and not react, right? Like not get, you know, you will be in so much less trouble if you will try, you know, and that's hard because that's a huge trust issue that they have to build with us, right? But we have to build with them too, of like really following through with that.
Totally.
Right? And so we
I
have to
mean,
help create a safe place for her to feel like she could own her mistakes.
Tell you.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can't say, hey, you come to us. It's so much more important that you tell us the truth than cover it up. But then when they come to you, you just go off. You know, all of a sudden you're just a monster, like, rah! Which can come out.
Totally.
I mean, which can come out. I'm not saying you can.
I get
but
that.
then they're not going to want to come back.
Right.
It's like a dog that doesn't want to come to you if you whip him all the time.
Totally.
Right? For no reason.
Oh, for sure. So,
but there is a time and a place.
Yeah.
You know, for that kind of instruction. But
yeah,
I love that so much. It just said, identify matters of the heart from which the behavior flows, like you just said. And when the heart is addressed, the behavior takes care of itself.
Yeah.
So when you take care of that heart issue, whatever it may be, if it's fear, if it's, you know, they don't want to be judged, it could be all sorts of things.
Absolutely.
You take care of that, and then you probably will see that behavior go away.
Right. Gosh, it's so hard.
I know.
And sometimes those behaviors, you know, just like we've talked in past episodes about, we just haven't learned that yet. Right. Sometimes it seems like a lot in childhood, they rear themselves over and over and over.
Yes.
And it can be so frustrating, right? Like we've addressed this, like why haven't you learned it? But I think just like us, like I think that's just a process of, it's just an opportunity for us as parents to get the conversation right again or better than we did last time. And for the child to just work through that, right? And like learn.
But working through it is so important because, I mean, honestly, I was way too soft. And I mean, it was so funny. My husband would say, okay, she's lying. And I'm like, no, look at her. She would tell us. Like, I mean, totally went to bat for her.
And that's a good mom.
Turned out that she was lying. The little twitch, she was lying. And I was like, come on.
You were believing the best.
I was totally, but like a fool, because I was just overly. And James was like, no, I can really tell, and we need to address it. But I just wanted to brush it on it because I didn't want them to get in trouble.
Sure.
I didn't want to see them sad.
Yes.
But that's protecting them in an unhealthy way.
For sure.
And don't you see that so much where we don't want to make our kids sad?
Right. Or tell them no.
Yeah.
You know, all of those things. I mean, and I think culture plays into that, you know, right now. And, just not breaking their spirits, which of course you don't want to break a child's spirit, but they're, you know, and also, you know, we don't want to do anything to hurt their confidence. I mean, we get a lot of mixed messages around that because we want them to be secure, right? Yes. But not, what's the other word that I'm looking for? I don't know.
Well, but it was just interesting because he was like, you know, she's a kid. And that's just what kids do. They're, you know, they're sinful too, and they're trying to push limits. They're trying to test boundaries.
Absolutely.
And, you know, it's just going to be natural. It's not natural for a child to grow up and not have any of those issues.
Right.
You know.
And that's how they work out, you know, what they should be doing.
How to handle life as they get older.
How to handle life. How to be a successful person or a good human, and like all of those things. And we don't learn because we get it right all the time. We learn by messing up.
So to deny that they even mess up is really not a good idea.
But that, you're so right. But that is so hard because it, you know, it reflects on us, right? Like, we're either, like you said, embarrassed of it, or it just frustrates us when they do something that is wrong.
Especially in public. Yes. And they do something like that or get caught or act like a crazy person. And you're just thinking, that's my job. Like, I'm literally at home, mom, raising them. And this is what they have to show everyone else. And so you're embarrassed or you're annoyed and all the things. And then it goes back to you, though. Like, that's more... It's all about me.
An image issue.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not insecurities.
Insecurities. No, it is. It isn't. And then, you know, that's where the doubt, right, for me would come back in. Like, well, gosh, it's embarrassing, you know, so I had to nip that in the bud, right? But then it's like, but did they really learn anything in that moment, or was it really just about me? So then that doubt would creep in about, like, am I even a good parent? I'm doing this wrong. Like, you know?
And there's the line of, sometimes they are just being kids.
Totally.
You know, and kids mess up just doing kid stuff.
Right.
And do they have to be reprimanded for that?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
No, and I think, again, it was this book. It was in one of the other books that I read. But he talks about foolishness and folly, the difference between, like, foolishness and folly. And if I'm remembering it right, it was 18 years ago that I might have read this book.
Yeah,
but,
maybe.
You know, folly is just... messing up. I think I could be switching this around, but folly is just messing up, and foolishness is I know the right thing to do, but I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
Right. And those are two different things.
Totally.
You know, and sometimes it's hard to decipher. Do they know the right thing in this moment, but they're just not doing it? I mean, that's absolutely something that needs to be, like, disciplined, and absolutely. But, or is it just child folly where they don't know? It's just a mistake that they don't know that they've made. Does that make sense?
Yes, folly versus foolishness. That's perfect. I mean, even thinking about us as adults, if we were to try to navigate life and try to go through new experiences and mess up, but then we had someone harping on us every step of the way, I would fold right there. I wouldn't want to try anything or
lower your motivation for anything.
Yeah, and then talk about insecurity. I think that would just be sky high.
Yeah, I think something I remember feeling was, or finally realizing much later in my parenting, was they're my kid, but they're God's. Like, he's got a purpose and a plan for them.
Right.
And, you know, as much as I think about their future and see things in them and want to encourage those things and, you know, see them in their future in my mind too, like what they're going to be.
Yeah.
I have to constantly remind myself that they're not my kid. They're not my little ball of clay to form. Yes. You know, God created them, and I get to raise them, and I get to come alongside them and guide them, right? But they're not my creation. They're God's creation.
That reminds me of my next quote.
Okay, let's hear it. I want to hear it.
So another one of my favorites. A parent's right to discipline their child comes from what God has called parents to do.
Okay.
Not because of their own agenda.
Yes.
I love that.
Yeah.
And God has called children to obey him, which means obeying their parents.
Yeah.
And that's not because the parents are in control. but because God has called them to that. So that's so interesting, because I love that. It's basically just saying, we have a role that God has asked us to do with our kids. Mm-hmm. It's not to berate them. It's not to mold them into something that we think they need to be. It's not our agenda. Yeah, or that we never measured up to, but we felt like maybe we should have.
Sure.
And, it's just that we have to give them back to Him. Mm-hmm.
It's so hard.
We have these children, but really we need to give them back to Him and ask Him, how can we lead them well? How can we parent them well? Let my agenda fall to the floor. And I think some of that, parents are the authority. We have to remember that too.
Yes. Yeah, it's important to have boundaries, as we talked about,
yeah.
and tell them no, even when it makes us unpopular as a parent. I feel like there's a huge push right now to, be your kid's friend, and people will say, don't be your kid's friend, it's, you need to be a parent, but I also feel like, gosh, there's this mixed message there too around, you want your kids to like you. And of course we want our kids to, so it's this, again, balance that we really do have to go to God with and go, okay, how do I?
It stings bad when you have teens and they're like, oh, I just can't ever tell you anything, or I can't talk to you about any. You feel that, and you want to immediately remedy it, and make it not that.
Right.
And you would be like, oh, no, you can't talk to me. I am your friend.
Yes.
I find myself feeling that, but then I have to step back and remember my position.
Right.
I'm not their friend.
Right. And they need a guide. They need us to be their parent and to guide them.
Right.
But I think at the same time, there is, grace, so much grace that we need as a parent for ourselves, but also for our kids, right? So we don't exacerbate, is that the word? them and drive them crazy so that we push them away, because we want our kids to want to continue to spend time with us past when they have to spend time with us, right? Like,
and I feel like that's when the real friendship happens.
You're right. Yes.
When they're
an adult,
older and they have their own children.
Yes.
That takes on a different relationship, I feel like. But right now, first and foremost is that position of authority.
Yeah. You remind me of, in the book, he talks about an upside down funnel.
Yes.
And that was so helpful for me too. Again, I read it when it wasn't applicable, but I remembered it. And he talked about when kids are small, really having to monitor and kind of control and put very strict boundaries around, don't touch the stove, don't walk in the street, just very, black and white things. And there are a lot of them when they're young. So that's like the bottom end of that funnel that's very small. And then as they get older, more into their preteen and teen years, starting to allow them more responsibility and less control, you definitely still have boundaries with them or
because
for
they
them.
They still crave, even though they may say that they do not.
For sure.
Like you are smothering me, you're over.
For sure.
They still need some boundaries.
But we do absolutely. But we do have to allow them more freedoms than when they're small, and understand that they are growing and their minds are growing as well, and their their personalities and all of that, and closer and closer to being an adult. And so we have to allow them more within reason and still within boundaries, but and just, I don't know, and just that funnel towards 18, when they're really making most of the decisions themselves.
It really makes it hard for me when I see helicopter parents. I'm just going to be honest. There's something inside that just wants to explode when the kids are old enough to kind of do some things more independently.
For sure.
And moms there just, don't.
Right,
and I'm just like, can you let them
for sure
have a second, you know?
And I think it comes from a place of, don't want them to hurt. Don't want them to experience pain, right? Don't want them to hurt others, or in kind of a control thing, without keeping in mind that they've got to mess up. We have to let them mess up and be able to come alongside them and be a support to them to get back up, right? And that guide and that there's that support rather than keeping them from ever messing up or being perfect or,
our Heavenly Father who loves us so much.
Right.
We feel pain, right?
Yeah.
We fall down.
Absolutely.
We have some things that tank us.
Right.
but he never leaves our side.
Yeah.
And he's there the whole time,
Absolutely.
encouraging us. Yeah. And I just feel it's kind of the same. That's the modeling that we're looking at.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So here is the next one. So this one talked about shaping influences. And I'm not sure if this was his brainchild, the shaping influences, but it says shaping influences determine who a child becomes. However, children are not helpless victims and parents are not merely molding clay. So that's back to your talking about shaping with clay again. But I love that because he's telling us that kids aren't just mindless creatures that we're literally just molding however. Yeah. They have their stubbornness. They have God-given abilities and God-given wills, desires too. Yeah. And so when we're, trying to parent our kids, it's not like we're just shaping them to be whatever we want them to be. We're up against something. Yes. And, it's interesting too because I guess I hadn't thought about them as helpless victims, but sometimes you do. Yes. You see them as, well, they need me. Yeah. I'm everything. It's all up to me. Yeah. Right. I've got to not fail. Yeah. But I think we can take some of that pressure off.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to fail. Yeah. I mean, I think that's inevitable, right? At times, there are going to be times that we're like, well, did that wrong. Should have done that better, you know? And I think we've talked maybe in a past episode about it's important to own that, right? Even with your kid and go, man, I shouldn't have responded to you that way. I know I got really upset when, I should have just talked to you about that or listened to you. I
think that's one of the biggest things that we can do is humble ourselves in front of our kids because when they see you modeling apologizing, when they know it's maybe embarrassing because let's face it, when I have to apologize to my kids, it's very humbling.
Oh, so humbling.
I mean, it's not really my favorite time. No. But it's so important. It's good for me. It's good for the kids.
And I think it breathes life back into your relationship with them too. Yeah. Because you're modeling something so important for them on forgiveness and making amends. And like those are life skills that our kids need, right? And if we just tell them to do that, they're not ever gonna.
Totally not.
Right? Right. But if we show them that we mess up and are able to model appropriate making amends or saying you're sorry, right?
I love that. And an emotional tie happens there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It builds trust and
so what he put under as the guardrails are these shaping influences. So it's saying that all families have these. You may not be aware of them, but your family has them. Totally. And so these are what will impact your children. Structure of family life. Okay. So that structure word there that you were talking about, just having boundaries and kind of what you do as a family, what your family looks like, how you operate. Family values, family roles, family conflict resolution, family response to failure, and family history. I feel like those were so amazing.
That is amazing.
I mean, response to failure, hello.
Right. To have that planned out, like this is how we're going to respond.
I mean, when we respond to failure, our kids are watching. Yes. What are they seeing when you are failing at something?
Absolutely.
I can't say mine has been pretty.
No. Nope. We either try to cover it up or blame someone else, right?
Totally.
Like those are my two go-tos. Yes. Like, it happened.
Oh, shit. That's probably not me. Totally not me.
I didn't sleep last night.
Yes. I didn't have my coffee.
Absolutely. There's so many good excuses.
And man, excuses are so annoying. Oh, yeah. Aren't they? As you get into adulthood, like, enough with the excuses.
Well, you see through them. Yeah. And I think it's even hard as an adult to we can come up with them, but even getting them out, you're like, okay, they know. Right. Like, I'm not hiding anything. I just really messed up.
Yeah. It's even worse when your kids call you out.
Oh, gosh.
Like, okay, Mom. Sure.
Yeah, our kids are like experts at spotting it. Our failures.
At so many things.
Yes. Yeah. And so, but there is so much. There can be so much doubt around. God, again, am I a good parent if I'm messing up, or if I'm, rather than those mess ups are opportunities, right, to address a conversation that needs to be had, or just be vulnerable and say, man, as humans we mess up.
Yes.
I was about to say jacked up because
jacked up, that's
I'm
my
that
word
too. Yeah.
We're
jacked up, or we can't, and so
I feel like, and I tell my kids this, I say, hey, look, the more I mess up and the more opportunity you have to see what it's like being an adult, I feel like is good for you, because I felt like once I made it into adulthood, everything would be amazing.
Right.
and it would be easier.
Yes.
And how many kids out there think it would be easier to be an adult?
Right.
So many.
Yes.
I feel like they're like, well, I just hate being a kid. I just want to get older.
Yeah.
But it's so important for them to see that adulthood has challenges, that we cry, we grieve, we have fun, all the things.
Yeah.
But if they don't know that, you know what I mean? And they hit those hard bumps in the road as an adult, you don't want them to think, well, I'm terrible.
Right.
I'm a failure as a parent.
Sure.
All the things that we go through.
Sure.
So why not share it with them?
I know. And it makes us relatable, you know, to be able to relate to when they're having friend troubles in middle school, right? Like, gosh, that was so hard when my girls were in middle school, and just the girl friendships are so hard.
It's really difficult.
Yes.
Really
and it would
difficult.
be easy for me to kind of keep that at arm's length and be like, well, you should just be a good friend, and or she's not being nice to you, right? You know, or I can like channel my adult friendships that are hard sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Or what I've learned in the past. But even as adults, we have, you know, relationships they take work.
They do.
Right?
Oh,
and so that's not necessarily, you know, the sign of a bad relationship. It's just that is a relationship, and it takes work. And so, you know, some are friends for seasons, and some are friends for life, and some are friends for, you know, but like, so just being able to be relatable to our kids in that moment and kind of walk through that with them.
Yeah, which goes with the conflict resolution, which is that not a huge one?
So big. Yes.
I mean,
sibling
if
rivalry.
One thing, that might be, I know that they say public speaking is the number one fear, but I don't know.
Yes.
Sometimes I think conflict and communication is
for
just
sure
right up there, maybe number 2.
It is. It's so
hard.
Well, you just feel out of control, or I feel like, or I start to feel like I've got to get control, right?
Yeah.
When there's conflict, or when there's, whether it's between siblings, like my kids arguing, or they come home and they're like, so-and-so's being mean to me at school. And it's like, oh gosh, like
That's
that fear,
the
that
part.
feeling of like, okay, well, it's on me. Like I've
Yes,
gotta
right.
figure this out.
And you're
fix
only
it.
hearing one side of the story.
Yeah.
So then Mama Bear comes out and you're like, he said, what? I'm about to roll up to that school, you know, and you can't do that. We have to think, oh, there are 2 sides, and really work through, okay, how can we do this in a healthy way?
And again, to your point earlier of getting to the heart of it too, like, right? Like it's not just about the fight a lot of times, or what you see or what you hear, you know, it's like, what caused you to be, you know, so hurt by what they said?
That's so good.
Right? And again, just having, and I think when we can do that, it lessens for at least us too. And hopefully for our kid, if we can lessen our, you know, anxiety, just to be like, okay, let's talk about why this happened. Right? Like, and listening to them, like asking them, like, how did you feel when they said that to you? Or when you said that to them, how did it make you feel? Did it make you feel powerful to call them that name? You know, and, you know, and just whatever it is, like addressing an emotion, or attaching an emotion, or you know, and helping them to kind of start to see like, oh, I was angry and didn't, you know, and I felt like I needed to, you know, control the situation and call them a name, or they called me a name and it hurt, you know.
Yes.
I don't know.
Or even smaller things that I feel like are smaller, but I know it's big. You know, my kids will sometimes say, well, so-and-so, I just don't like hanging out with that person because they really annoy me.
Yeah.
And, you know, normally I feel like we would just say, oh, well, then don't hang out with them.
Right.
They're annoying.
Yeah.
But is that really the right thing to do? So I've tried to do better about, hey, you know, they're different.
Yeah.
But different's okay.
Right.
And do you want to hang with them all the time? No.
Yeah.
You know,
and that's
they
okay.
may not want to hang with you all the time either.
For sure.
However, you don't avoid someone.
Right.
And
That's different, or isn't the same as you.
Right.
For sure.
That's such a big thing.
And I think it's a good, again, life skill.
Yes.
To teach them when they're young, and a good opportunity.
Right.
You know, to later in life. You're going to be dealing with a lot of different kinds of people. And there's beauty in that, like looking for the beauty in that rather than what annoys you, because that's so easy.
It is. You know, I love what you talked about earlier with, you know, as they get older, just loosening the reins a little bit, that funnel goes out, and that is so important. I have this friend, they're so amazing with parenting. They're just super, it's like they're professionals really. But the kids would get to a certain age and they'd say, okay, you can now say this word. This is an 8-year-old word. You know, this is a 9-year-old word. It would be something like funny. Dumb.
Yeah,
you know?
Stupid.
Yes. So they weren't just always saying those words, because I feel like kids can overuse some of those. But when they have the awareness to really actually know how and when to use them.
For sure.
But I thought, well, that's really brilliant. And that's giving them a little bit of ownership and independence, right?
Right.
It makes them feel
absolutely.
like, oh, I'm 9.
Yes.
So we did that with our kids. And I remember one of the words was stupid.
Okay.
You know, when they got to a certain age, we're
Yeah.
like, you can say stupid. And they were like, I can say the S word.
The S
And we're
word.
like, let's not refer to it as the
Right.
S word.
It's the other S
Yeah.
word, the longer S.
The longer one. And, you know, then it was shut up. And before that, they'd say, you know, shut the door up the elevator because they didn't want to say.
Oh,
it's so
my
funny.
gosh.
But whenever they got to the certain age where they could have the word, they just felt bigger. And they felt like, oh, I'm a little more trustworthy. And
Sure.
I just feel like that's so important as they get older to give them more space, to give them more,
For sure.
I don't know, responsibility and ownership.
Yes.
So I guess if anyone is listening to this one part, I would say, please don't baby your kids all the way until they leave the house.
You can. I mean, you can, but I think
can.
it's going to be at their detriment for sure.
Yeah.
And I get the draw to that, right? Like just not wanting them to be in pain, like we've talked about, not wanting, but you're right.
Because we love them.
We do.
And protect them.
Absolutely.
But we have to remember our one most important goal is to give them back to God.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And again, just resting in the fact that, you know, there's freedom in that and grace for us as parents that they're really God's. Like, they're ultimately His responsibility, right? Like,
right. So it's really on Him.
It's really, we're just here to guide. I mean, I'm joking, but you get me. Like, we aren't so special, right? That He's like, you have to do everything right. Yeah. And if you don't, they're not going to turn out.
That's the thing. Right? We are not as important as we think.
I know.
Like, we're not going to make or break our kids. If they make it to some big, you know, if they go to Harvard and they do all these things, is that really us?
Yeah, and that will not be because of me.
Totally.
I would be like, that is evidence of God.
That's amazing.
My kids are super
and if
smart.
God can pay for that, that's even more amazing. Yes, I know.
Exactly.
And then, you know, the other way, if they, in your eyes, fail, or if they themselves fail something that they try, that's not a reflection of you.
Right.
And, you know, that's maybe their journey.
Yeah.
And what they needed to go through.
Absolutely. And that's a whole nother segment, right, on identity and like not finding our identity in our parenting or our kids, you know, which is, that's hard too.
It is.
Absolutely.
Well, I've loved this.
Yes.
I mean,
so helpful.
Much. Yeah.
It
Just
is.
a reminder of what our job is and how our insecurities can play a role and what our insecurities come from.
Yeah.
And really, if we think about it, these are God's kids and we are just
Absolutely.
have the privilege of raising them.
We do. This has been awesome. Well, if anyone listening wants more information on that or is looking for more community around that, we actually have we have small groups that are parenting small groups.
I love
it. I just
and
remembered
I hear
that.
they are going amazingly well. We have some great leaders.
Yeah. It sounds did you guys do a small group? Is that how you read the book?
Oh, no.
Okay. We did. And so that was where I heard about the Tedd Tripp book, which is not what they're talking about here. But anyway, community, parenting, awesome.
Totally.
From others. So
totally.
Great stuff.
Nice. Well, good. Hey, if you guys ever have questions or topics that you'd like for us to talk about, let us know.
Absolutely.
And other than that, it's been so much fun, as always.
As always. We'll see what we talk about next time.
Bye, girl.
Bye.